All right, today we start again back into Genesis 34 this time. Now, this is a new section now. We're coming to the end of Jacob's travels now. He's resettled back in the land. So if you remember some of the themes that we've seen in the life of Jacob, it begins with his very name. What does the name Jacob even mean, if you remember?
Deceiver.
Deceiver. Which still stuns me that people name their kids Jacob, but so it is. So a little deceiver, and that's been a theme in his story from the very beginning. We have God's sovereign will, and it's being accomplished through deceit, which is really interesting. So Jacob is the one. We know it's God's will that Jacob be the one to get the blessing and to get the inheritance. And how does he come by it when he's the youngest? Well, does it through a manner of deceit. He doesn't really trick Esau when he gets the blessing. When he gets the birthright, he just takes advantage of him. But certainly when he gets the blessing, it's through an act of deceit. And so God corrects an evil that is happening through deceit, which is really fascinating. He sovereignly works, accomplishes his purpose, even through deceitful means. So we know that Isaac was going to bless Esau, and he was wrong to do so. But it's through the deceit of Rebekah and Jacob that he does the right thing and comes around. Jacob, when he sees Laban, what does he want that is not what God wants, but he does the right thing through deceit, if you remember when he gets to see Laban.
He wants the wrong wife.
Yeah, he wants Rachel. He falls in love with Rachel, and again, they're both Isaac and Jacob are being guided by their senses. Isaac is going to bless Esau because he loves Esau's food. It's a very sensual moment, and Jacob wants to marry Rachel because she's pretty. She's beautiful, and it's a sensual decision. Whereas Laban actually is doing the right thing, strangely enough, not really doing the right thing, but he ends up causing the right thing to happen because it's going to be Leah who is the one whom God has chosen. And the Messiah will not come through Rachel, it will come through Leah. But Rachel is the one that he chooses, and then through deceit, he actually ends up marrying Leah first and then Rachel. It's a mess. It's a total mess. We have later on, we do have a reconciliation with Laban and then a reconciliation with Esau. That's the beauty of the story. God sovereignly works his plans through all this mess and evil and deceit, and then he resolves it all as well. He brings it around so that Laban and Jacob depart in peace with a covenant. He works it around so that Esau and Jacob are reconciled. And well, here's another story in Genesis 34 that carries those same themes of God working his plan through great evil and deception. And somehow things are working out. So let's take a look at Genesis 34, one of the more disturbing stories in the Bible. But I think it can be instructive for us too. So, Bob Thomas, would you start us off here? Verses 1 to 4. We'll get started with the setup.
Okay. Now Dinah, the daughter of Leah, whom she had borne to Jacob, went out to see the women of the land. And when Shechem, the son of Hamor, the Hittite, the Hivite, the prince of the land, saw her, he seized her and laid with her and humiliated her. And his soul was drawn to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob. He loved the young woman and spoke tenderly to her. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this girl for my wife."
Okay. Let's go through the situation of the characters. So they're back in the land, and we first have Dinah. And what are we told about Dinah?
Well,
Who is
she's born to Jacob.
Yeah. Um, she's the daughter. She's the only daughter mentioned of the children. The daughter of Leah um, and Jacob. And it says something about her as the story begins. What is she doing?
Is it the daughters of the land?
Yeah, it says here that she went out uh to see the women of the land. That's an interesting phrase. That phrase, the women of the land, is we've heard that phrase before. I don't know if you remember where that phrase was mentioned. It's actually the same term used for when Esau married the women of the land, and that caused great distress to his parents, to Isaac and Rebekah. So why is that a problem? What's this connection to the women of the land? Why is that a problem here?
Well, they were the locals, and they were the Hivites, whom Esau. I mean, whom. Let me go before Esau. Isaac wanted nothing to do with.
Yeah. Now, is this racism that's going on here? Are they just racists and they're just what's why is this an issue here that they're not to mingle with the women of the land here? Are they just
God
horrible
told
people?
me not to.
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Well, they were probably not Israelite women, Jewish women, or of the chosen people.
Yeah, there's a
It-
lot going on here. And the Canaanites, remember, this is the one thing we've learned about the Canaanites, the people of the land, is the Canaanites, remember back in Genesis 9, uh, are accursed. Whereas the Israelites are with Abraham are blessed. And you have this, and there's more going on than just what's happening with this family. Well, we don't want to intermarry with them because it's going to be bad marriages. Look, it's going to be bad marriages whether you marry in your own race or outside your race. It's not about that. It's about God's plan of salvation. That God, remember the covenant with Abraham was, I'm going to bless you, and you're going to be a blessing, and all nations will be blessed through you. And so that line of salvation must be preserved. It's not, think of it this way. It's like someone who has joined the military. They wear a uniform and they distinguish themselves when they're in a foreign country. They're on duty. They have a task to perform. They are not to be out there mingling and hanging out, going to the bars with the locals, and really they have a job to do that for another country. There's nothing wrong with people doing those things, hanging out with them and being a part of the community and that kind of thing. But when you are on a specific mission, as this family is, they're on this mission to save the world. The salvation is coming through them. And all these times, these Canaanites are going after other gods. They're pagans, and he warns them. If you remember later on when they inherit the land under Joshua, he warns them, don't intermingle with them. They're going to lead you astray. They're the ones who are going to lead you to other gods. They're the ones that are going to do this. You have to, there's a much bigger thing happening here. When Christ comes, all that changes. Now there's neither Jew nor Greek once Christ has come. But until he's come, you have to protect and provide that separation between the two. I think it's an important point to make because this is not that the intermingling which was appropriate, was very important for them back then, is not so today. And because of the nature of the new covenant. So if you think of it this way, before Christ comes, the salvation is like an egg. It's not yet developed. It's growing. We're moving toward it till the one day it is hatched and the bird can fly out. And what's the purpose of an eggshell? What's the purpose of that?
To protect what's in it.
Yeah, it protects what's inside. It keeps it from the defilements, because if it cracks early, it's going to be ruined and it's going to be spoiled. And so much of the old covenant is like an eggshell, that the law acts that way, separating the people from other nations. They're not allowing them to intermingle the dietary restrictions, and the holidays, all the things that they do, designed to separate them until the Messiah comes. Now, once the bird or the chicken is born and breaks forth, that shell is no longer needed. There's no longer needed for that. It can be discarded at that point. So those separations are not the point anymore. So it is here. Something very significant is happening, and you're reminded of Esau, of when he was intermingling with marrying the women of the land, that Dinah something's not right here. We don't know what she's doing with the women of the land, but it's written in a way to remind us of Esau, that she is going to places where she probably should not be going, and she goes out to see them. So again, we don't know more than that. We don't know what she was doing, but the way it's written, it just makes you think that, okay, Dinah is in a sense transgressing. She's moving away and connecting with people she shouldn't be connecting with. Ends up getting her into a little bit of trouble too. So what happens next? We're told next there's another character mentioned now called Shechem. And let's talk about him. Who is Shechem?
Son of Hamor the Hittite.
He's
Hivite.
Hamor the Hivite. And why is that significant?
He was the prince of the land.
He's the prince of the land. So his father, and Hamor, if this is as close to a king as you would get for that territory here. So he's from a great authority in that region, like a tribal leader, a prince, or and what does he do?
He rapes her.
Yeah. He seizes Dinah and rapes her. Says specifically, humiliates her. Okay. But then it says something else about him, verse 3, which is
But
interesting.
he's drawn to her now and wants to marry her.
Yeah, he loves her.
And he
And-
speaks tenderly to her.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Well, you have to understand, he's not a rapist, Shechem. He's a prince. So a rapist is someone who is out there seeking to humiliate and to harm women and to just satisfy his lusts. And rape is really a humiliating thing. But he is a prince who can do whatever he wants. That's the whole thing. He's above the law, and he takes, it's like David and Bathsheba. He takes her. He's the king. He can do that, right? You can't say no to that. And so he can do that to the women of his land. He can take any woman he wants to because of his position. This is the I'm not saying it's good. I'm just saying that's the order of the day. It's like kings are above the law. Princes are above the law. He would never allow anyone to do that to his sister, but he could do that to anyone in there.
Now, I have a question. I guess it's the cultural thing. When he seized her and laid with her, humiliated her, would that, and of course, then the marriage, so on and so forth, but would that have prevented her from being accepted by another man because she was quote unquote ruined? Do you know what I mean?
That's a good question. Perhaps now we know that in Israelite culture there is forgiveness. It's not I mean, how does someone like a Rahab get married again? And she's a prostitute. Talk about being defiled. And yet becomes a fully respectable woman in Israelite society. So we know there is a path of grace there somehow. But you're right. For a lot of people, that would have been a humiliating. It could have been the end of, and that's not just in those times, but you go back into the Victorian age, just maybe a couple hundred years ago, and something like this would ruin a noble woman. Now the lower classes, they don't care, whatever. But the upper classes, absolutely, that would ruin their position in society.
Right.
So he clearly humiliates her, but he also loves her. And so the sense is he did wrong, but not in his mind. In his mind, he has the right to any woman, and he likes this Dinah. And so he's going to take her and have sex with her. And he speaks tenderly to her. He loves her. So he doesn't see himself in any way as a criminal, as something awful. The surprise,
Dinah's not from this world.
Dinah is not from his people. That's the thing. That's the distinction here. He probably could have gotten away with it if it was any other family. He would have gotten away with it. In fact, any other family would have welcomed it, because this guy is a man of means, and this is great. The prince wants to marry you. I don't care if you're not in love with him. We're going to live comfortably now. Marriage was you got to understand that we have living in a free society. We can have a romantic view of marriage. For most of human civilization, romance is the last thing. It's about survival. It's about being able to put food on the table. It's about securing, covenants and peace. And there was so much more at stake than whether you were in love with the person. It's really about, finding a good match that will secure the future of your family.
Even when kings and they would betroth their children to another kingdom, it's so those two kingdoms would not fight with one another.
Oh yeah. How many? Yeah, absolutely. How many kings throughout history have many wives, and how many do you think they actually loved? Very few. Maybe occasionally here or there, but it's like no. It's a very utilitarian thing. Again, not saying it's good, not saying it's God's plan at all, but that was the reality that they're in. But he loves her. He speaks tenderly to her, and so then he does what?
He wants to marry her.
Yeah. So he speaks to his father to get her for his wife, because that's how these transactions will happen. It's going to be an exchange. It's an arranged marriage where the parents will agree to this and work out the details. And so his father will need to talk to Jacob and try to make this work. So, and through it, again, in a normal situation, Hamor and Jacob would be thrilled about this, because now their families, and Jacob is a large contingent. It's not just Jacob and his 12 sons. It's Jacob and his 12 sons and all their servants and all their children and this is probably hundreds of people that are part of this community. And now you're going to be able to have peace with a very powerful, wealthy community. So this is going to be a wonderful alliance. I mean, it just all makes sense. All makes sense, except for one thing. And that is the covenant that they are under with God, and that the Canaanites are not. This is a threat to the plan of salvation. Forget about for a second the happiness of Dinah and Shechem, whether this is a good marriage or not. It's much bigger stakes than that. the salvation of the world is at stake here. Because if this union happens, what's going to become of the Israelite people?
They're going to be intermixed.
Be intermixed, and it's going to be, how do you have now a people who are destined for wrath and destruction joining together now with people who are supposed to be blessed? It's going to be a mess. It's going to be an absolute mess. And you know that the paganism is going to take over completely. It's going to be lost. So there's a lot at stake here. So this is another challenge threatening God's promises and his covenant. So let's see how it resolves. So verses 5 to 7. Rachel, I'm sorry, Elizabeth, would you read this for us? Oh, you're muted.
There we go. Now Jacob heard that he had defiled his daughter Dinah, but his sons were with his livestock in the field. So Jacob held his peace until they came. And Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. The sons of Jacob had come in from the field as soon as they heard of it, and the men were indignant and very angry, because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, for such a thing must not be done.
Okay. All right. So let's talk now about Jacob. What did we learn about him in this scene?
He's a wise man. He held his peace till his sons got back.
All right. So yeah, he heard that Shechem had defiled his daughter. So he knows what happened. But he holds his peace until his sons come home. Hamor then goes out to speak to him. So we have Hamor, that's the father of Shechem, goes to speak with Jacob. And then the sons of Jacob come home. And what's their response to them? So Jacob's sons, let's talk about them for a second.
They're outrageously angry. They're outraged.
Yeah.
Mm.
They are indignant, very angry. And why are they so angry?
Oh, it's their sister.
The violation.
Yeah.
Ouch.
This and it's in the way it's phrased, because he had done an outrageous thing in Israel. That's really interesting. To do an outrageous thing in Israel. What is that? What is Israel?
Israel's their family now, right?
God,
Yeah.
God's chosen people.
Yeah, this is God's, Israel is, remember, Israel is Jacob's name given by God, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And now it becomes, there's already, even before it's really developed into a full nation, this is now the family. I think this is the first time where the people of God, this family is called Israel. I think this might be the first time. The family of we'll call it the covenant family, I guess. The covenant family of God is called Israel. So even though they don't have a land just yet, they've purchased a small field, small section. They don't really have the full land. It's already kind of being identified. This is the sort of the initial stages of this nation, of this covenant people. And so that what has happened here is an outrageous thing in itself, we could say, but the thing is, it's not an outrageous thing outside of Israel. It's typical of how things happen. Kings and princes take women. They just do that. Like even like in I mean, like in England, remember that thing, the prima nocta? Remember that? I think they show it in Braveheart, where the king has the right to sleep with a man's wife on their wedding day or something like that. Some horrible thing. They do it. They show it in the movie Braveheart, and it was just that these are the rights of kings. These are the rights that they have. They to humiliate people, to subject them, to take women as they please. And it's not considered an outrageous thing. It would have been outrageous if it was one of the people of Shechem. But Shechem himself, being the prince, he can do this. But for them, this is an outrageous thing that this should happen for Israel, even though it was a common thing among the people of the areas. All right, so let's take a look at what happens next here. Now Hamor speaks in verse 8 to 12. Teresa, you want to read that for us?
Sure. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, the soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him to be his wife. Make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters for yourselves. You shall dwell with us, and the land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it, and get property in it. Shechem also said to her father and to her brothers, let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me, I will give you. Ask me for a great bride price and gift as you will, and I will give you whatever you say to me. Only give me the young woman to be my wife.
Wow. So we have Hamor speaks and then Shechem speaks. Let's talk. What does Hamor say? What's his offer? So he states, my son longs for your daughter. So it's this really, I mean, this, he's a real lover here, this guy Shechem. He really just longs for Dinah. And what does he say?
All the land is got your name on it. Everything we have.
Yeah. So here's the offer. Okay. He says, make marriages with us. You can take our daughters, we'll take your daughters, right? Dwell with us. The land shall be open to you. And what else?
Give us your daughters and take our daughters for yourselves. He
Yeah.
wants to
Exchange daughters. Dwell with us. The land shall be open to you. Dwell and trade in it. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say that, and it's basically, it's everything God doesn't want.
Mm,
If this actually happens the way they're saying, you've just totally ruined the lineage.
yeah. Get property. Notice that this is I'm going to suggest, especially after we hear Shechem. Let's talk about Shechem first, then we'll come back to this. What does Shechem then say?
I'll give you anything that you ask for, basically.
Whatever you ask, I will give. As great a bride price as you want. Now, I'm going to take him at his word that he's not trying to deceive them. And I want you to see that this is a great temptation. It should remind you of some scenes we've seen before, where someone was offered, one of the covenant people was offered an enormous amount and turned it down.
With Sodom,
Yeah. What was that situation?
the king of Sodom was offering everything, and I think whether that was Jacob.
Yeah, he was given the plunder after he rescues Sodom and brings it all back.
Yeah,
He says to Abraham, I'll give you all this wealth, it's all yours, and just give me the people, you can have all these things. And Abraham refuses. And why does he refuse it?
He didn't
Because he-
want to look as if he was helped by this. He didn't want his success to be due to this.
Yeah, he said specifically, he says, I don't, lest anyone say that the king of Sodom made me rich. Something like that. That's not a direct quote, but that's roughly what he says. And this is being of faith. It's like God is the one who will give them the land in his time. God is the one, the Lord is the one who will give them wealth and prosperity and what they need. They are given a shortcut here. It should remind you of another temptation, probably the most famous temptation.
Jesus.
What's
When
that?
It reminds me of when Satan said to Jesus, everything can be yours.
Yes.
The whole world, just bow to me.
Yep. Yep. They're about to get, if they just intermingle with them,
Mhm.
they will get two of the promises that God given to them. They'll have many descendants, promise them that. They'll become a great nation, and they'll have the land, or at least more of the land than they had before. And those are two of the things that God promised them. Of course, the other thing was that they won't get is the blessing. This is not going to be a blessed union. That's the temptation. And Satan would say, well, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, right? But the blessing is what really counts, that God is the one who'll provide for them. And so this is a real crisis that's happening right now. And you can imagine the pressure, because not only what do you do now if you're Jacob? There's 2 serious pressures upon you. One is the temptation to take all these things and to receive the land. But the other is an unspoken temptation, which is, what happens if I don't? What happens if I refuse?
now you've got a very strong enemy.
Yes. And what happens? And this man is willing to do anything for Dinah. Will he and his father be willing to kill all of us to take her back? That's a real distinct possibility. So there's more in this scene than just, oh, he's making this incredible offer. But there's also going to be the temptation of fear that if I don't enter this union, I've made an enemy now. And if this man is as lovesick as he seems to be, and is determined to get whatever he wants, and he seems to be willing to go to the ends of the earth to get what he wants, what would they be willing to do? Will they take her by force? That's the fear as well. So, well, let's pick it up from here.
So do you think that Jacob is thinking at all along the line of God's promises, or do you think it's just, as you stated, if he doesn't do it, he's going to be defeated?
Well, the end of the story will reveal a little bit of that too, as well. So we don't know exactly what mindset Jacob is in. He's clearly, as we left him off, he is clearly a man of God at this point, and he is building altars. He's honoring the Lord. He is truly a man of faith. You know, we can question how much faith he had before, but after all he's been through with Laban and Esau, it is clear he is in the right place in his mindset. Now, his sons are another question, but as far as Jacob is concerned, I think he is clearly has a mind to he knows the promises. However, he does seem to be, well, he's not the focus of what's going to happen next. The focus is going to be on his sons. And that's going to be important. I think the story is designed to tell us more at this point about the condition of the sons of Jacob than Jacob himself. And their condition is going to determine their destiny. It's also going to set them up for the next big narrative in Genesis, which of course is the Joseph story, and his dealing with his brothers. So let's see what happens. But I think Jack, the text will later on give us a little bit of insight at the end of the chapter about
Okay.
Jacob's mindset too. So we'll get to that in a second.
And before you move on, you were going to say something about them getting the land. You said, I'll get back to that.
The land.
Go back, we said, to get the property, dwell in and trade it and get the property.
Yeah, that was the temptation of giving them the land as well as the multiple descendants, which is what God had promised to them.
Okay.
They're going to take ahead of time. And again, very similar to Satan's temptation of Christ. He's destined to receive all the nations, but Satan says, if you bow down to me right now, I'll give them to you right now. And it's like, no, I will not worship no other God except the Lord. So, Jack, you want to read for us 13 to 17?
The sons of Jacob answered Shechem and his father Hamor deceitfully because they had defiled their sister Dinah. They said to them, we cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised, for that would be a disgrace to us. Only on this condition will we agree with you, that you will become as we are, by every male among you being circumcised. Then we will give you our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to ourselves, and we will dwell with you and become one people. But if you will not listen to us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and we will be gone.
All right. So now we turn to the sons of Jacob.
So they still had Dinah at this point? They still had her?
Oh yeah. They're still with her, and he wants to marry her now. She returns home after being raped,
Mhm.
tells the story, and now Shechem wants to make an honest woman out of her, so to speak. But she's with her family, and so the Jacob and his sons are there, and they're with her, and they have not handed her over to him by no means. That's why they're pleading with them, come, would you please give us your daughter? The sons of Jacob, it says something about in verse 13, very important word here that helps us understand what's going on. What does it say about them in verse 13?
Answer them deceitfully.
They
Yeah.
answered deceitfully. Again, that's a theme in the Jacob story, is this deceit. They're going to right a wrong through deceit. Which is really interesting. Through a treacherous thing, a great wrong is going to be righted. So it's almost like two wrongs seem to make a right in these stories. A great evil has happened. It needs to be corrected. And in at least Jacob's story, it seems to be corrected through an act of deceit or treachery. Again, as we saw, with Isaac is about to do a great wrong in blessing Esau. Through an act of deceit, he does the right thing happens. Jacob is about to do a great wrong in rejecting Leah, and through an act of deceit, the right thing happens, and she becomes his wife and bears him his children. Now we have a great wrong is about to happen here, in not just the defiling of Dinah, but the union of these two families. And it's going to be through an act of deceit and great treachery that it will be in some sense corrected, so to speak. I'm not in any way going to defend anything that's happening here and say that the right thing was done. We're just going to we're going to marvel at two things: the wickedness of man and the sovereignty of God.
Yeah.
And you see that throughout the scriptures, don't you?
Yeah, they talk about the doctrine of concurrence, where two things are happening concurrently. And God's will is playing out through the free choices of men. In this case, it's deceit.
Yeah.
And but it serves its purpose.
Yeah. And that's the gospel we proclaim is exactly that. It's the wickedness of man that brings about the greatest act of grace and love that ever happened in the cross. How does Christ go to the cross? Only because Herod and Pontius Pilate and the Pharisees and Judas and the Romans all conspired and did a wicked thing, a treacherous thing. And yet, if they hadn't done that treacherous thing, we would not be saved. So the greatest evil becomes the greatest good. It's like a judo move. He just uses the evil of this world to bring salvation. And that's going to be the theme of the Joseph story too. You meant it for evil, God meant it for good, and that good was even your salvation. So the sons of Jacob answered deceitfully. So what they're about to do, we're already told, is a wicked thing. It is not something saying, there we go, that's how you should behave. And yet it is going to be an important, significant thing that will, in a sense, save the world and save their nation, because they're kind of in a pickle right now. So they answer deceitfully. And what do they say? So they don't mean it. That's why I say, when you read the Bible, when people speak, take them at their word, unless it tells you otherwise. So when Hamor and Shechem speak, I take them at their word. They're speaking honestly. They intend, he loves her, he'll do anything for her. But when the sons of Jacob are now speaking, they are not to be believed. Because it says they spoke deceitfully. They'll tell us. So what do they say? What's their plan here? Well, first, what's their offer?
If you get circumcised, you'll be like us, and we will swap women with you.
Yeah, get circumcised. And we will do this, right? And we will join with you. We'll take up your offer. What is the meaning of circumcision?
It's an identification.
It's a covenant.
Yeah, it's a sign of the covenant for them. So they are basically, insincerely though, that's the thing. What is this is the treachery of this is that circumcision is a sign of the covenant of salvation, but they are being deceitful. And as you know, if you've read the story before, it will be used to bring about their destruction. So it's really a treacherous thing that they're doing. They're taking a covenant sign that is meant to set them apart, that they belong to God, and they're using it in a way to deceive and to bring about the destruction of people, which is really a great violation of this. So that's their plan, get circumcised. Let's see how the response is to that. What did we do off here? Rob, you get that 18 to 24?
Okay. Their words pleased Hamor and Hamor's son Shechem. And the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. Now he was the most honored of all his father's house. So Hamor and his son Shechem came to the gate of their city and spoke to the men of their city, saying, "These men are at peace with us. Let them dwell in the land and trade in it, for behold, the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as wives, and let us give them our daughters. Only on this condition will the men agree to dwell with us to become one people, when every male among us is circumcised as they are circumcised. Will not their livestock, their property, and all their beasts be ours? Only let us agree with them, and they will dwell with us." And all who went out of the gate of his city listened to Hamor and his son Shechem, and every male was circumcised, all who went out of the gate of his city.
Okay. Now here's a question for you. If let's say that the sons of Jacob were sincere, that they were willing to take up this offer and they were sincere, what would they have required of Shechem and all the men of their city along with circumcision, what would they have required of these men?
They would have had to accept God.
Yeah, exactly right. If they were going to be truly in covenant, they would have had to repent of all their idols and embrace the Lord. That's why a woman like Rahab later on can be welcomed in with all her family, because they clearly embrace the Lord. Not just about circumcision, but it's about putting away all the idols, and embracing the Lord. And they don't require them of all. This is it's deceitful, and we don't even know again where the faith of these men is at this point. But there's no requirement to abandon idolatry. Just get circumcised. Hamor and Shechem, how do they feel about this?
This is good news.
Yeah. And all the men accept the offer.
It sounds like they're being deceitful too, though, saying that once we get them, then we have all their flocks.
Yeah, I don't think so though, because I think they are. I think they mean it as like we're going to become. This is like a merger of two companies. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be great for all. It's a win-win. I don't see them as taking advantage of them. I think maybe they're thinking we're more powerful than them, and they'll sort of absorb into us. It might be one of those kind of corporate takeovers. But even then, they could say it's good for them too. You know, we're not going to steal from them, but we're going to expand. It's going to be a merge. It's going to be perfect. It's going to be great. But they're willing to do this, and they see the benefits of it. Why are they willing? Well, especially I can understand why Shechem is willing to do it, because he wants to marry Dinah. But they see it as it's just going to be great. It's going to expand our opportunities and our wealth. And so
Well, the king is telling them that this is a great deal, right?
yeah.
So, I mean, you do what the king says.
Yeah. Just the livestock we'll get to drop in all their beasts be ours. Yeah. So I think they're saying it in a joint venture kind of way. It's going to be what's ours is ours, and what's theirs is theirs. We're going to swap wives with them. It's going to be great. It's just going to expand our reign. It's the wisdom that Solomon used that got him in trouble. You know, this is the reason why Solomon took 1,000 wives or concubines, and they're all political alliances. It just makes perfect sense. Brings peace to the world, you know. So that's great. Let's dwell with us. And they all listen to them. Every male was circumcised. Okay. So there we go. Let's see what happens next. Now, this is a city we're referencing here too. So this is not a small little village or town. Let's see what happens next. 25 to 29. Claudette, you want to read that for us?
On the third day, when they were sore, two of the sons of Jacob, Simeon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, took their swords and came against the city while it felt secure and killed all the males. They killed Hamor and his son Shechem with the sword and took Dinah out of Shechem's house and went away. The sons of Jacob came upon the slain and plundered the city because they had defiled their sister. They took their flocks and their herds, their donkeys, and whatever was in the city and in the field. All their wealth, all their little ones and their wives, all that was in the houses they captured and plundered.
Okay.
And Jacob, do you want me to read after that?
No, we'll stop right there for a second. So, okay, so this is on the third day. What happens? The people are still sore. Who does this out there?
Simeon and Levi.
Simeon and Levi. Okay. So just two of them. And what do they do?
They killed Hamor and his son Shechem.
Yeah,
And all the males.
they kill all the males.
How is it that two men can kill an entire city?
That's what I'm asking. Um,
They were probably in great pain at the time.
I mean, I can imagine you'd still be sore, but certainly, you'd have to.
And they're clearly not expecting it.
They're not expecting it, but still, it's like it's quite a feat. It's quite. I mean, I got to give them a little credit here. I mean,
Isn't it possible? Is it possible that they actually had more help? You know, sometimes they just have one figure speaking for the friends that are with them, and I mean,
That's a really good point, Rob. It's quite possible that they took armed men with them, but those two brothers are the ones held responsible for this, Simeon and Levi. So Judah and Reuben and the others either had no knowledge of this or didn't partake in this, but they could have taken servants with them. You're right. It's quite possible that they took. There's no mention of the men. We clearly are. It's written in such a way that all we see is Simeon and Levi. They're responsible for this action, however it happened. They kill them all, and then what do? The next is the sons of Jacob. When they come upon the slain, all these men, what do?
Plundered the city.
Yeah. Plunder the city. They take everything. Flock.
Including the wives and children.
Now,
Yeah.
doesn't that then start to dilute the genealogy again, though, if they're taking all the wives? Or
Not necessarily. It's they can be taking them as servants for themselves.
right.
And those wives and kids, they could give to, if they're virgins, they could take them for themselves if they wanted to, or their own children. Or they can, because now they have sons. But now that's the thing, is if they're virgins, they don't carry with them all the troubles, the idolatries of their families and whatnot. They're not defiled like the others would have been. So they would have been able to take them as their own wives if they wanted to, or give them to their sons, or give them to their servants. Yeah. So it's crazy. So I mean, I'm glad they did that, as opposed to killing them and letting them all die. So I guess that's a silver lining. I don't know how you want to phrase it.
Well, and the wives and kids would pretty much feel like they had to anyways, because they've not only lost all the men, but they've lost all the wealth too. So how do they feed themselves? How do they whatever? How do they live?
Yeah. And again, this is these people are, especially the men, are cursed. I mean, these are not good people. They're not like these innocent victims. Yes, they were taken unaware, but the tribes in the land of Canaan are particularly wicked people that live there, and sometimes we forget that, of how awful they are. They are deserving of wrath. Now, whether Simeon and Levi have the right to do this is a question, and it's clear that the narrative does not condone what they do. We found out that this is the reason that Simeon and Levi do not inherit any land in the land of Canaan. They're the two tribes that are not given a section of land. Levi becomes the priest, and they're not allowed to own land. And Simeon actually gets absorbed into Judah. Their property is within the realm of Judah, and they get absorbed into that tribe. They lose so clearly Jacob does not look favorably on this, and God does not look favorably upon this. And yet that treacherous act saves the day in one sense. It allows Israel to maintain their identity and integrity, and they do not fall into this great temptation that would have overtaken pretty much any other tribe. And again, I really think that given that they're in a city, this is their land, Shechem is far more powerful than Israel is. They're a far greater nation than that. So it's really it's like a David and Goliath story in one sense. This is so. All right, let's finish up our story here, 30 to 31. Bob, you want to finish this up?
Then Jacob said to Simeon and Levi, "You have brought trouble on me by making me stink to the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites and the Perizzites. My numbers are few, and if they gather themselves against me and attack me, I shall be destroyed, both I and my household." But they said, "Should he treat our sister like a prostitute?"
All right, what do you? This is how it ends. We don't hear any more of the story. This is how it concludes. So let's talk about Jacob versus Simeon and Levi, and who's in the right here? What's Jacob's concern about this? Why is he upset?
Because he's still outnumbered.
Yeah, we are few, and is he upset about the atrocities of what they just did?
Doesn't seem to be.
Doesn't seem to be. And he's afraid that he will become a stink to the inhabitants of the land. What does that mean?
They won't like him.
Yeah.
It just amazes me what the Lord does. Levi's, they're all the priests, right? And here he is slaughtering a whole city. The people that God chooses just blows my mind.
I know, huh? I know.
Mm.
Yeah. It's really an interesting thing here. And I have you really, what I love about the Bible stories is that there's no real, like, the hero villain thing where you have the good guys and the bad guys. It's like, who's the good guys here? Who are the bad guys? It's like, I don't even know what to make of this. It's like, the good guys are seriously flawed, and even the bad guys have some virtues. I mean, got to give Shechem a little credit. And he wants to marry Dinah. He's willing to do anything he can for her. He's a man of love and passion. Kind of admire him a little bit in some ways, even though he did a terrible thing. Simeon and Levi, they're supposed to be the good guys, and they go off slaughter an entire city. Who the good guys, the bad guys? It's like, well, there's only one good guy. That's the Lord.
It feels like the way we portray the Wild West.
Yeah. Kind of is.
I think it's always important to realize what kind of literature you're reading. Genesis is what's called historical narrative, unlike some of the other books. And this is what they did.
Mhm.
I think you get in trouble when you start drawing conclusions.
Yeah.
Integrity conclusions and all that stuff, because this is just what they did.
Yeah. And it's a great point, Robin. As a narrative, the Bible just tells us what happened. It doesn't tell us whether it's good or bad most of the time. You have to figure that out. And you should be able to figure it out, what's good or bad. But then other times, like, you have to be careful of judging people from other times and other contexts. It's easy for us in our comfortable city, in places of law and order, where we have avenues of justice and policemen and so forth like that we can seek out, to look down upon them. But what are your options here? What do you do? How do you go forward from here? What do you do in this situation? It's not so simple. And they may have acted wickedly. In one sense, it's a tragic situation. There's a wickedness about the whole, everything about the story, and that the people within it, it's like wickedness is the water that they swim in. And so you're going to behave in ways that are going to be horrifying. He's afraid they'll become a stink, that they'll be destroyed, that his household will be destroyed.
And what Shechem did put them in really a no-win situation. If I go along with them, then I'm going against God. And if I don't go along with them, then I'm already in trouble with them.
Yeah, it sounds to me, as I read the story, does it sound that Jacob was about to go along with the plan? Does it seem that way? That Jacob was about to allow his daughter to be given to this man and for them to intermingle with them?
Well,
That he-
the fact that I mean, he already knew that they had said that they all had. Jacob knew that his sons had said, "All your men have to be circumcised," and if he didn't plan on going along with it and didn't want the slaughter to happen, then why wouldn't he have said something then?
Mm. Yeah, because he does say that to them. So Jacob is there with his sons when they make that offer. He is there with them when they say, circumcise your men, right? And so they're
Yeah.
acting deceitfully. He's not aware of their conspiracy, but he is aware of their plan. So it seems like Jacob is kind of like Esau. He's about to do something that is going to be disastrous. He's about to give his blessing to the merger of these two families. Just like Isaac was about to give the blessing to Esau to do something that would have really been bad, would have ruined the line of salvation. Jacob is about to give into that temptation. He's a man of faith, but he's not of strong faith yet.
And again, by deceit, he does what God would have wanted.
And Simeon and Levi, by deceit, the right thing happens. The merger is destroyed. And the people are judged. So the Simeon and Levi's response to this is what?
Should we treat our sister like a prostitute?
Yeah. Should we treat our sister like a prostitute? Let me put this over here.
They said, should he treat our sister like a prostitute?
Yeah, should he treat our sister like a prostitute? That's how it ends. With that question. So it's like a question for you. Should he? Oh,
No.
no, I mean you end up with like with Rebecca and Isaac, it ends with that Isaac comes to his senses where he acknowledges he's right. They're allowed to get the last word, implying in a sense that Jacob is sort of rebuked here. That yeah, what Simeon and Levi did was evil, but Jacob was about to do something in one regard, a greater evil. He was about to throw away the plan of salvation, throw away the promises of God. He was about that. That is an existential crisis. And out of fear, he does it out of fear of what might happen to them, that they might be become a stink to their neighbors. And I can't blame Jacob. I'm like, I would be totally in this bout. Faith is a remarkable thing, that people can act in faith in the promises of God when all the circumstances are against them is a miracle in itself. And so Jacob here is, I'm going to say, I think he's acting out of fear, not faith. Simeon and
Actually,
Levi,
lack of faith in God.
yeah. God has promised that I will give you descendants. I'm going to give you the land. Jacob sees an easy way out. He's about to fall into that temptation. By the grace of God, his wicked sons save the day, strangely enough. It's a strange story. But it has been this constant theme in this. And we're going to see more of it in the story of Joseph when we get to that soon enough. Actually, we have another act of deceit in the next chapter when we get to Judah and Tamar. That's a whole nother story of deceit that saves the day. And then we get to Joseph. So that seems to be the pattern for Israel.
It seems sometimes, like us, we justify bad decisions so long as it's accompanied by a little dead religion.
Interesting.
And you know, because you know, you said Jacob is there when they hatched this whole plan, and somehow he signs off on this whole deal because it involves circumcision with no faith.
Yeah.
But so long as you go through the motions, I'll
Yeah.
go along with it. And I think we do that sometimes too. We know we shouldn't do something, but somehow if it's accompanied by phony religion,
Yeah.
we feel better.
Yeah. That's interesting. I remember a story of a couple that, well, these two that they were committing an act of adultery, but they're both Christians, and so they decided that they would pray first about it before they.
Yes,
so they,
exactly.
they said a prayer before they went to bed. So I mean, just that kind of deceit. I think you're right, and we deceive ourselves so easily. And I think Jacob, this is not no one looks good in this story. Really, no one looks good in this story. And yet somehow God's will is accomplished through it all. And I think that's the main theme here. Well, let's break it here.